We have a fabulous speaker again tonight, Gene Austin. Gene, thank you for being here.
Great to be here.
Let me remind you a little bit about Gene's background. Gene has served as Chief Executive Officer of Bazaarvoice since February of 2014 and President since 2013, and is a member of the board when he first joined in November 2013. Gene has more than 30 years of experience delivering results in high-growth technology companies with a particular emphasis on SaaS businesses. He most recently served as President and Chief Executive Officer of Convio, Inc., a homegrown Austin software business where he was the driving force behind the company's success that led to an IPO and an eventual sale to Blackboard in May of 2012. Prior to Convio, Gene was BMC Software's Vice President and General Manager of Enterprise Data Management and previously worked at Dell as Vice President and General Manager of Internet Servers. He also served as Senior Vice President of Sales and Marketing at CareerBuilder.com, where he contributed significantly to his success as a startup that led to a 1999 public offering. That's going to be interesting.
The bubble.
The bubble. Gene holds an MBA from Washington University in St. Louis and a BS in Engineering Management from Southern Methodist University in Dallas. He's been an active Austinite for over 15 years, especially in the area of education. Gene will serve as chairman of the board of the Greater Austin Chamber of Commerce in 2015, and also serves on the board and executive committee of KIP, Austin Public Schools, and the Juvenile Diabetes.
Yep. JDRF.
JDRF, thank you, of Austin. Gene, welcome.
Great to be here.
Thank you. Tell us about your entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, so I will cover three specific experiences to kind of give you a taste. And what's interesting about them all, hopefully you'll find interesting, is that they're all pretty different entrepreneurial experiences. And the caveat is I have never founded a company, but I have probably tasted every experience as an entrepreneur you can. And I would now classify myself as an entrepreneur, even though I haven't found a business. But we'll kind of go through that. Before I got involved in my first entrepreneur background with CareerBuilder, I was in sales and mostly marketing jobs with tech businesses. The last job I had prior to CareerBuilder.com was head of marketing for the server business at Compaq Computer, $3 billion business at the time, had this nice big office, had my own executive assistant. I'm not even 40 years old. I mean, life's pretty good. And I get a call to join a guy that I'd met about 2 years earlier in Washington, D.C., to come start this company called CareerBuilder.com. And I was employee 10. The head of sales and marketing was really the first salesperson. And it was a classic startup in a strip mall, leaky roof, bucket, catching the water when it rains, the whole 9 yards. And I definitely had a what the hell have I done moment 3 months into it, but quickly realized that it was the most exhilarating thing I could have ever experienced because I was kind of getting stale in big companies at the time. And we basically started CareerBuilder in Washington, D.C. CareerBuilder at the time was a complete workflow application around resumes and managing job seekers and the relationship between a job seeker and an employer. Back then, your in-basket was stacked high with resumes. You had no idea who these people were. Your voicemail had 15 voice messages from people wanting to just get that in with you. And we thought we could revolutionize the world by automating all that using the web. And that business went public with 20 million in revenues and 20 million in losses. In 1999, it was crazy. I stood up at a board meeting to do the sales presentation, basically to report on the quarter to the board. And a guy stopped 15 minutes into it and goes, "Enough of this. We need to talk about going public." And we went into crazy mode in the middle of the bubble and took the company public on numbers that you would have a snowball's chance in hell this time doing it. And I'll tell you that I learned so much about dealing with pressure and growth because we were growing crazy. It was one of those crazy growth stories. We were spending money like drunken sailors, but we were growing like crazy to build a brand. And it started with a couple hundred hits page views a day on a job seeker site, and now Career Builder continues to be a ginormous category. And by the way, when you look at careerbuilder.com, the color scheme of Career Builder was chosen by yours truly. It's still there. Awesome value. So.
See what an impact, Gene.
That's right. So let me tell you what I learned at Career Builder, because we took Career Builder public, and then I made the decision to return back to Texas after we'd gone public. But I'll give you a couple of insights onto what I thought were the key things there. First of all, dealing with a pivot. You guys have probably all heard of the term, the business pivoted. And in a real small business, a real startup, again, I was employee 10, it will happen. So just get ready for it. Those of you that are ready to start your own business, I applaud you for that. But if you stay close to your customers and you really watch what's going on inside the business in the early days with the first 10, 15, 20 customers, no doubt there will be a pivot along the way, meaning a significant change to the business model or the product or something that was just not thought of, perhaps. That's going to happen. The second thing, in the Career Builder, we did it twice. We started off as a workflow, real quickly, a workflow engine where I sat and posted job descriptions to careerbuilder.com, and somebody said, I'm interested, and applied, and that resume came in, and it routed around to all the people to look at it, and they all scored it. And at the end, you had a scoring of the resume. Well, we sold a lot, but we could not get IT to approve at that time that resume flying across their security system. They would not. We couldn't. We were successful in about 3 out of 10 sales of actually getting it deployed. So we had to change completely that whole workflow model. Then resume quantity was really high. Resume quality wasn't what people wanted. So they were getting inundated with resumes, but there were a whole bunch of people they didn't like. So we changed our model again to where you could post your job openings to a network. So we had businessweek.com, we had other marketing.com, we had all kinds of targeted websites. You could actually post your resume, your job postings there to try to draw more targeted individuals. So two pivots there. And it was both pretty disruptive, but in the end, it was the right thing to do for the company going forward. Second thing I learned was the first million is really hard. And some of you that have listened to other entrepreneurs would probably hear that before, but it is. It's hard to get to the first million. After that, it gets a lot easier because you've probably got a business model that people understand, that resonates with the customer, that the company knows how to operate around, and it gets a little bit easier. Third, I was the VP of Sales and Marketing. Bad idea. Okay? And because the reason I'd say that is the sales dog wags the marketing tail. And it means as a sales and marketing leader, the sales, you're constantly worried about what's going on that quarter. And yet marketing obviously is thinking about programs that help drive business the next quarter and the next quarter. So you've got this inherent tension. That's probably fine when you're really small. But I will never, ever hire anyone to be a sales and marketing VP unless I am completely comfortable that a lieutenant for that person, either in the sales or marketing side, can really run the show, because it is a really tough gig to do both of those. It's very tough. So that's kind of an organizational dynamic. And then lastly, I probably learned more about hiring and firing than I ever, because we were growing so fast and I couldn't afford to have a bad performing salesperson or marketing person. So I really learned how important it is to make a good hire. Now, at the same time, I would say a lot of people get so wrapped up in it and they test people and they run them through the ringer and all that. I don't know if I go that far, but I would certainly say that as you build a team as an entrepreneur or as a leader in general, it is such an important deal to hire well. Your team, I will tell you that your team is so important for execution, and execution is where most companies fall down, right? Hitting the numbers, doing what they say they're going to do, those types of things. So I hired and fired more people in my 3 years at Career Builder than probably in the next 10 years. It's just one of those things that's crazy. So that was Career Builder, a classic moonshot, spend money, make money, go public when we had no business going public. You know, stock went to 20, and then a year later it was 2, and we sold it at 8. So, you know, it was kind of a real jerky ride for those of us that were there early. So that's Career Builder.
But still around today. I looked up 2,500 employees today.
Still around today. Still got my color scheme.
Good. Gene.
Second, so I'll give you just a quick. My wife and I had been targeting Austin for a while. So in 1999, we came to Austin, and I came in at Dell to actually start a business inside of Dell. And I won't go through my Dell or BMC background for you for the sake of time, but I will tell you that once you have been in that small company world and you are making decisions down the hall, or Friday you're having a beer and you go, let's try this on Monday. Yep, let's do that. And you go into a Dell and BMC, both great companies, both companies that have done very well. It is just such an adjustment. You know, I went into Dell my first day. I'll never forget this. And I wanted to call my wife. She was back with the kids, and I kept dialing 9 to get an outside number. What the heck's going on? I can't get out. Went down to somebody and said, oh, you got to have the long distance code. Really? Yeah. So every employee at Dell had a 10-digit code so they could track who was doing long distance phone calls. And for a call center standpoint, I went, wow, have I really gone backwards? Now Dell obviously did that because they're so cost conscious, and you know that's a cultural thing they decided to adapt at the time. I'm not sure they still do it now, but it is really tough. So one of the things to think about as you go forward, those of you that just have that entrepreneur blood and you want to build businesses your entire life, congratulations going forward. Those of you that are maybe say, you know, I'm not really sure what spins my prop, you might want to start building skills, because I just finished with the 3 BVers that are in the evening MBA program, talking to them about how to think about their future. And building skills is so important. I built skills in sales and marketing and R&D before I ever became a CEO, and I'm so much better off for it because I can go into any kind of meeting and kind of tell what's going on. And so, you know, there's so many ways to get to where you want to be. I chose the skill building, and then I started taking on the big jobs in my early 40s, and then obviously being a CEO. So, but anyway, I left BMC, and Austin Ventures called me and said, "Are you interested in being a CEO?" And I go, "Well, yeah, sure, why not?" And the company was in the nonprofit software business. Really? So, am I on the C team or the D team for the CEO? You know, nonprofit software? Really? You got to be kidding me, really? I mean, because nonprofits I know of have boards of 50 people, right? And they struggle making simple decisions, right? And God bless all these nonprofits, because I support a lot of them. And can they make a decision? Will they really buy a bunch of technology? And can they make a decision in my lifetime? And so I go into Convio at $5 million in revenue, and you know, we took it to $100 million and took it public and sold it. And it was one of the greatest experiences I could ever imagine. I would have never thought it. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. But at Convio, it was a case of a founder who had taken it as far as he or he could have in this case. And the board said, we need to bring in somebody who can, you know, kind of mobilize the team to another level, bring in the right executive team and kind of get there. And I was fortunate enough to kind of, you know, they called me and I said, I'm going to give this a run, because I have to be honest with you, there was a lot of fear and trepidation going in, but it was my first CEO gig. So I said, I'm going to get my CEO stripes. And next thing I know, I'm fortunate enough to, you know, see my picture up on Times Square as the company that went public at NASDAQ, and just, you know, kind of this dream that you just can't even believe happened. But it was tough. It was a very tough run in many ways. I had to redo the entire management team because I had to build, you know, one of the things to think about is that the people you hire at 5 to 10 million as your leadership team is not necessarily the same team at 50, and that's tough. An example is the person I brought in, the first hire I made at Convio was my head of sales. And we had worked together before, and I knew he was just a great guy for Convio to run sales. And at 50 million, it was a different business, and it wasn't his sweet spot. And he's now back in another small company and doing what he does the best. And so those are the tough things you have to think about as an entrepreneur or an executive as you lead a business, is that people definitely have their sweet spot of where they're really good. And it might be size of business, or it might be type of model, whether it's a channel sales or direct sales, those types of things. So give that some thought. Another thing that I think is really important, and this came into play both Convio and Bazaarvoice, is if it's your business and you're the founder, knowing what you're good at. Having a real self-examination of who am I, what am I good at? Because in the case of Convio, the board and the founder, they had a little bit of a tug of war because no founder wants to give up his baby, but came to the conclusion that it was the right thing to do. And Vinay Baggett, was a phenomenal, and he's a genius entrepreneur, will tell you to this day it was one of the best decisions we made, was for him to step aside. At Bazaarvoice, we'll cover that in a second, the founder probably will admit to you he went too far running the company. And so, as you all think about your future going forward, and if you want to start a business or you're part of a business and you're part of an executive team, you want to make sure you're with a group that everybody kind of understands what they're supposed to do, what their roles are, and how they fit into the overall success of the business. So self-awareness is good. I wrote some notes down. First M&A I did at Convio, we bought a competitor. We did not get sued by the DOJ. And frankly, no, I'm on tape. I'll withhold that.
Later, other questions.
Yeah. But I did a private to private, and you can appreciate this as a venture capitalist, a private to private M&A. So neither company had market valuation. The only valuation of the company was what each of the shareholders and the VCs, frankly, who, our company's a lot bigger than that, right? And it aged me 10 years to listen to these VCs fight over who's worth what and how are they going to divide up the pie. But doing an M&A for me was quite an experience. I'm M&A averse, meaning I'd rather build organically because I think that it's truly integrated from a technology standpoint. The culture's aligned. There's a lot of good things for organic, but there are times when you just needed to you got to get to another level in some way, shape, or form. And so M&A is a fact of life now, and I've done a few of them now that I think, so I see the benefit in it, but I'm still probably more adverse. I see more challenges in M&A than I see opportunities, so a lot of times I have to be sold. But I'm getting there. That's one of my development areas, frankly, as a CEO, is to be more open-minded about how M&A can be transformative if it's done right. And then I think the other thing I learned at Convio that was really key was culture. We had a culture that worked incredibly well for us. The team pulled together in tough times. The team pulled together and went after opportunities. We started some new businesses inside the company because we had a great culture. We believed in what we did. I ran a very open communication. I still do. That's who I am. I'm very, very open with what's working and what's not on the boat. I think all employees should know, what's going on the bridge. It's not it's not just my staff, but I try to be very transparent with everyone about the keys to success and what's going forward. And that served me well at Convio, because when I came in, the company was loved what it did, but was kind of doing this, kind of going sideways and not going more sideways than forward. And by being clear about what I thought we could do, I said on the first day, I don't know why, but I did. I said, I think this can be a public company, and I got lucky. and we did it. But we kind of had a goal of changing the world and being important and making a difference in fundraising. And so for those of you that don't know Convio, we basically brought internet and online fundraising to nonprofits in a big way. And when Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans, we helped the Red Cross raise hundreds of millions of dollars in a week. And that's the kind of stuff that obviously it was great from a business standpoint. It didn't really change the dynamic of the company, but it changed the culture in that we matter, we make a difference, and we could really help people. And that allowed the company to grow the right way because we could talk to people about what we've done and what we do and how it matters. It certainly helped sales as well. But culture is a big deal. Culture is something 10 years ago that was kind of poo-pooed, but it's a big deal. It's a big deal because young people, many of them, some of you look pretty young, but you're all younger than me.
You're talking about me, of course.
Yeah, everybody.
Thank you.
But I'm talking about the 20s, early 30s. They want to be part of something that is right for them, right? Has values, is a winning team, is giving back to the community. And we tried to instill that in Convio and spades, and it worked very well for us going forward. We won awards for being the most community-minded business because we were doing all kinds of things. Like we gave employees 3 days paid for volunteering, right? If they went out into the nonprofit world and volunteered. Now, the capitalist in me said, if I send my employees out for 3 days, they're going to learn more about what nonprofits need, and I'll get better product ideas. But let's face facts. It was really about, in the end, a stronger culture, a team, people feeling like they mattered. So that was good. So that was Career Builder was a raw startup. Go figure it out as you go. Pivots left and right. Convio was a company that had a business model, needed leadership. I came in and tried to add the right team, which I was very fortunate to do so. Give it energy, make sure we did it right with culture. One of the things I'd tell you, I hired an HR VP way ahead of when my board was comfortable. Someone who made 6 figures, HR. I mean, VCs want you to have a $60,000 HR person to hire people. What do you mean culture? What do you mean you need this, you need that? And I said, no, I want people. I learned early on in my big company days from a woman named Nancy Anderson at Hewlett-Packard, who for some reason took me under her wing, that you put your finance person on one side and you put your HR person on the other side. Because the numbers will get you fired faster than anything, and the people stuff will mess you up big time. Because if your people aren't right, the numbers aren't going to be right. And so, I hired an HR person really early. Okay, my last journey is the current one, which is Bazaarvoice, and this is a turnaround. Right? So this is a company that was high flyer, admired by all in Austin, still in many ways admired, so I'm not trying to downplay that, but on a roll, going nuts, goes public 2.5 years ago, then acquires its competitor, a $12 million company, and we get sued by the DOJ. We have since lost the suit. We've divested the $12 million company. It still can't believe a $12 million company in our business when we're only 200 is considered a monopoly situation and anti-competitive, but I'm not the Department of Justice. I wasn't here when it happened, but I can tell you that I'm having to deal with the divestiture, and divesting a company that's been a part of you for 2 years is a new chapter in my book. And there weren't many people to consult on how to do that. So I've divested a company, but besides that, BV went through a CEO change. Our founder stepped down in November of 12, right after the DOJ said we're launching an investigation, but before they actually filed suit. We did a battlefield promotion of our CFO, meaning the CFO was promoted to be the CEO. I was brought in May. That was January of 13, or maybe it was November of 12 at the same time. I came in May of 13 as president, basically the number 2 person, and then I became the CEO later. We announced it later in 13, but it was official February 1st. So a lot of, first of all, you tell the company we're being sued by the government, and the uneducated would go, oh my God, the government? Like the government, right? And so they kind of freak out. And then you start going through CEO changes. And if any of you know Brett Hurt, which he's bigger than life and a phenomenal individual and entrepreneur, and then a gentleman named Stephen Collins, and then Gene Austin, it's, we're very different people, and so your company reflects the tone of the leader. And so the company went through a lot of herky-jerky. And I've seen attrition numbers that were pretty high, higher than I'd ever seen before in any companies I've had. And so that was a tough one because there's a lot of moving pieces, a fundamentally really good business. So those of you who don't know, Bazaarvoice powers a network of retailers and brands. If you shop online and you use ratings and reviews to shop with, stars and commentary about a product, and if it's not on Amazon.com, it's on any other retail or brand website, chances are you're dealing with Bazaarvoice's software. So the fundamental idea was to take the word of mouth marketing concept, right? You all listen to each other when you buy things. Hey, what do you think about the iPhone 6? Love it, get the big one, not the little one. That's the most powerful marketing there is. And Bazaarvoice really drove that into the digital world because now 85%, 90% of reviewing of products before you buy is done online. Whether you walk into Best Buy and buy it or not, you still start online. And so a fundamentally very strong value proposition, very good market penetration, great people. I inherited it. Fortunately, Brett, one of the best things he did was he brought a great culture to Bazaarvoice that allowed it to weather this turmoil. We wear green on Friday because that's the BV colors. In fact, this is the last week of our quarter, and we're supposed to wear green all week, but I didn't have anything that looked kind of nice that was green, so I wore blue and had to apologize all week or all day. But we have that spirit of winning and being a great company, and that has served the company well to get to where we are right now. And so we're in a rebuilding mode. I figured out as I walked around the company had lost its way on what winning is. What does winning mean for Bazaarvoice? And so I put together, with the help of the team, a plan to win. And the plan to win had 4 pillars to it, and that's what we're executing against. As we stabilize the company, which is kind of where I think we are now, we've stabilized the company, meaning that we know what's going on with the business because we didn't have great insight into the business when I inherited it. Our employee base is stable and growing again, which is great. We know the goes-ins and the goes-outs, I call them, so what's coming into the business and what we're selling and what's going out, so all those things. And now it's kind of get back to growth so we can get the stock going in the right direction again. And so, the learnings of BV, and I'll wrap up here, is installing accountability. Bazaarvoice had been so successful that when they really didn't have accountability. You didn't have, things just were going and people were doing things and a lot of good activity, but we didn't really say, I need you to deliver this by this date for this customer. In every business, your growth, crazy growth, always slows down. Always, 100%. Talk to Twitter. Their stock's down, 10% today because they started slowing down a little bit. And so if you're not ready for a slower growth environment, which BV wasn't, you start really getting tangled up because you can't mask issues because you're growing so well. And so, you really need to install accountability from day one. And accountability is we set a plan, we hit the plan, we understand what we need to do to make the plan, and that was one of the things we had to do. I think I talked about the rest. So
Gene, let me ask you. Let's go back to Convio a second. You took Convio to 100 million in sales, took it public, and then
took it public about 80, but yeah, sold it at about almost 100. Yeah.
And then Blackboard comes along and decides to buy it. What was the process you went through there with not just you as CEO of the business, but thinking about all those team members that had grown that business with you to?
Yeah, one of the things about being a CEO is, and they always say it's lonely at the top. And there's a lot of people that will say, so the board made the decision to do something. The board made the decision to do it. In all actuality, the decision the board usually goes with is where's the CEO and the management team's head. Mm-hmm. And I looked at the Convio business, and I'd looked at where we were. And this was not the first time Blackbaud had approached us. They'd approached us numerous times. And I thought, I think this, in the way they were talking about how they were going to do the business, I think it made the most sense for the company. And I have not looked back. I have an investor of Convio that said, if we were still independent, you guys would be killing the world and all that stuff. But I think we made a great exit. We made good money for our investors, the employees. I don't think Blackbaud has integrated Convio as well as they could have, but those things happen, I guess. But I think it was the right decision. But it is a decision when you sell your company. A lot will change. If you think your company is going to run pretty much as it did, but as an independent entity inside of another company, that's typically not the case. Now, I will also say that if I took over another $5 million business, I would probably not take it public, because being public is incredibly expensive. It's hard. We just live in such a regulatory environment right now. It's tough to be public. We probably spend $1.5 million a year at Bazaarvoice, $1 million to $2 million probably, just to be a public company. Right. And it's hard. And I would, don't get me wrong, there's something to be said about being a public company and watching your stock go up and people buying it and all that. But I spend a lot of time with investors, meeting with investors, and that's time I'm not spending with customers. It's not time I'm not spending with my team, because I've got to, investors need to be nurtured. They need to know where the company's going. And I spend a lot of time, preparing for remarks and what I'm going to say to the company. We do a lot of filings as a public company. And I'm not, I'm totally bought in. BV's a public company. We're going to make a great run of it. But I would just say that if I had it to do over again, as if I was anybody out here who's thinking about where you want to go, public will seduce you for sure, but you have to live as a public company. Mm-hmm. Going public is an event, and it's a big deal, and it's cool, and the employees get excited and all that, but then you have to live as a public company, and that's something you need to take pretty seriously.
So talk a little bit about your role, how it's changed from that 10-person startup to joining when you were predominantly sales and marketing to start with, to becoming the CEO of a $5 million company where you were probably still courting investors, but they were private investors, if I recall. Convio raised
we raised a couple
million.
Private rounds.
Yeah. And then coming in directly to a public company and now dealing with those issues. What was the different priorities you had in your role?
Well, in the sales leadership role at Career Builder, it was building a team and hiring great people and getting them assimilated and getting them productive as fast as possible. So, a lot of times people say, it takes 6 months to hire a salesperson, get them trained, and get them going. And, my job at the time was 3 months. Get out and get going and make good hires, right? And so getting that pattern recognition of what a good salesperson looked like and getting it going, getting offices open and all that. So I was in go mode. At Convio, I came in as a CEO and realized that I needed to be able to win the confidence of my engineers, my salespeople, my marketing team, services team, that, I wasn't the founder, and most of these people were hired by the founder, and they all were going, oh my God, Vinay's not running the company anymore. And that was a bit of a transition. And frankly, if Vinay could have easily made that really hard, but Vinay stepped aside and was an incredible asset to the whole process. And we were able to get the team oriented around a direction that I was setting. And when I came into Convio, the number one thing I had to do was say, these are the priorities, these can wait. Because we had 15 priority ones going on in the company. Why? Because we had a classic entrepreneur leading it. And entrepreneurs are idea. Great ideas, all of them. But you can't do them all, right? And Vinay, to this very day, the last years of Convio, would walk in my office and have 4 unbelievably good ideas, and I go, we just can't do these, you know. And
Right.
But that's what happened. And once we prioritized and we put first things first, things started to click. And then we started implementing Vinay's ideas over time. And at Bazaarvoice, it was convincing the company that we could win. That was my number one goal, is that the DOJ was on us. We were changing CEOs. I was here to stay, A, and B, we can win. And what winning looked like. And that was kind of the goal.
That's great. If you have any questions, if you could please go to the mic as I open the floor. But in the interim, I'm going to ask you another question. You've scaled these companies tremendously. I mean, you said yourself, it's tough to get to the first $1 million as an entrepreneur driving a business. And then the next, from my experience, has been from 1 to 5 million is another big step. But you're now a Bazaarvoice where you're at 200 million. How do you scale 200 million to something a lot larger?
The hardest part about being the CEO of BV versus some of the others is even at Convio, I think we topped out at about 400 employees. You know, I knew 70% of the company. I played basketball with the engineers. You know, I knew it's business, but you still kind of grow up together. And at BV, I come in and there's 750 people, and most of the people I pass in the hall I don't know, but I still try to be. And so when you scale with BV, the goal is I have to have a lot of frequent communication. And I'm very open about what's working and what's not. And I do that with the leadership team, meaning all the VPs and directors. And then every Friday, we have a corporate culture thing. It's called a gong, where the company meets for 30 minutes every Friday. And as a small company, it's kind of a natural. You meet on Fridays, and there's usually beer, and you figure out, what worked this week, what didn't. But as an 800-person company, having a weekly 30-minute check-in is unusual. But we use that as a point in time to talk about, what's working and what's not, and we use that effectively. But it's setting direction. To scale a company, it's knowing what you're good at, right? It's taking in making sure everybody is heard, right? So listening to the people that really matter. In most companies, there's a lot of people that matter a lot, and you're thinking about where the company goes. And then setting a course and staying on course with that, and you will scale. But, it does take, and one of the things I think entrepreneurs miss that they really should watch is staying close to how things work and process. Because both in Convio and Bazaarvoice, predominantly led by entrepreneurs, the amount of process, how do we make a decision, right? What do we do when a customer calls in with a problem that requires engineering and things, a big loop of continuous flow to make the customer happy? Entrepreneurs are so idea-oriented, typically, that the process side gets dropped. And I think if you talk to Vinay, as an example, and even Brett, if either one of those guys, Vinay actually runs a company now, he has an operating guy. One of his first hires was somebody to make sure the trains are running on time and we're doing things the right way. And Brett, I think if he ever ran a company again, he would probably hire a COO very quickly.
Great, thank you. Sir?
Yeah. Is this on? Yeah.
Yep.
You talked about pivot and how you pivot in an organization to maybe reshape the way you're doing business. Can you address it in terms of your revenue models? Because if you go into a company and you're at a certain level and you want to go to a much higher level, how much of a pivot is involved in your pricing models, your business model, And what's the process for changing that and driving the revenue?
So, the question feels like, how do you kind of get into get your altitude climbing faster from a revenue standpoint, going faster from a revenue standpoint, right? Typically, I would tell you that if it's a pricing change, those are pretty disruptive. And what I mean by that is, if you're small, right, and you have 50 customers, and you wanted to change pricing, you can roll that in. But if you're at 50 million or 30 million, and you go, you know what, we're going to go from a recurring revenue model to a performance model, meaning instead of a fixed fee, every page view of my reviews, they're going to pay me something. That's really disruptive. So I would spend a lot of time on pricing in the early days of the company to make sure you feel like you've got a good pricing model. I've been fortunate at Convio. We had natural pricing increases, so the customer bought into a pricing plan, and as they got more successful, they owed us more money, and they were usually pretty happy to do that. The area that I see people struggle with is, okay, so, we're kind of break even right now, and things are going pretty well at 5 million, and we're growing at 20%, and the VCs or the board goes, why can't we grow at 50%? Right? Because a $10 million company, you should be growing north of 50. And getting all of a sudden uncomfortable with the idea of, I got to go hire 20 salespeople. They are going to, base salaries are going to be $100,000. I'm picking numbers out, but it's not that far off of that. And I'm going to take my $100,000 a month burn and go to $1 million a month. And people get, the CEOs kind of, and the CFO or the finance guy go, oh, really? But that, if you're an enterprise organization and you sell direct, meaning you sell big ticket items, that's typically what you have to do. And getting comfortable with that notion of, wow, I thought we had 2 years of cash and now we have a year of cash is something that, you gotta, your board can help you with that, but that's something everybody in those early days has got to stomach. I had to stomach it at Convio. But what we did was we said, let's go, because I had confidence in my sales leader. And then we immediately went out and started raising money, because another lesson is, don't raise money when you need money, because the VC has the advantage. So if you're down to 6 months of cash, and if you're out raising money, good luck. You'll get it. You won't love the terms. If you've got a year's worth of cash, you need to be out, right? That type of thing. So,
my question's about time management. Usually entrepreneurs have so many things going on, and Laura mentioned that you're involved with Chamber of Commerce and juvenile diabetes, and obviously a CEO is not a 40-hour-a-week job. How do you juggle all those things? How do you prioritize, I guess?
Probably should have my wife here to answer
that. What would your wife say?
It's hard, and I would tell you that you have to prioritize hard. But I've always, Convio got me. When I joined Convio, I would call me a capitalist pig, meaning I was all about company go. But we dealt with nonprofits, and I actually started saying, wow, there's a lot more to life than making money. There's helping kids, there's solving world disasters, and that actually softened me up. So I actually I now spend time in education and other areas because of a love. And if you have a passion for it, you can do it. Now, as a first-time CEO, that was tough. It's much easier now because I know what can get me in trouble and what can't. I know problem, just like any job you're in. The first year, everything's like high priority. Oh my God. The second, you start realizing, that can wait till next week. And then by the third, you start realizing, okay, what are the really important things? But my coaching to you is, I don't have a secret formula in time management, because my wife would say I'm the busiest person she knows. But I would tell you that, only accept things that you have passion about. I have passion about Austin, so I'm the chair of the Chamber of Commerce next year. And that is out of many years of being with the chamber and trying to, really make Austin a great place to live and work and play. And, I'm excited to do it. But it's going to take a lot of time, and, but it's something I only do for a year, and then I move on. But it's out of passion and love for, this town. So,
Gene, how many hours a week, roughly, do you think you work? And how many hours a week do you play?
I am always on. So the only day I do not work, meaning I don't get on email, I don't do anything, is Saturday.
Okay.
So Sunday I will usually do a couple hours of email if it's needed. It depends on the load, so I walk in on Monday and I'm not like overwhelmed. And I am, I leave the house at 6:30 to go to the gym, and then I get home about 6:30. So, and work for me is meetings that are not maybe Bazaarvoice oriented, like City of Austin and other things like that. So, whatever those hours are.
Is work and play the same for you?
No, I mean, I'm an avid golfer, love golf. And so my Saturday morning is a golf game. Sometimes my Sunday is. And my kids live in town. My son's at a 12-person startup that's getting ready to go live, which is kind of cool. And so he's kind of doing a little bit what I did. So, but I really am much better at work-life balance than I was. And I guarantee you all will struggle with it if you're really passionate about it. Try to maintain it. My wife will tell you I was terrible 10 years ago at it. I'm better at it now. But, we had to have a couple of, hey, buddy, conversations. There are trade-offs to running a high-growth startup. There clearly are. It's not all about, there's a lot of nights when it's maybe not going well, or you've not been home, or you're sick because you've been on the road so much. There are trade-offs, no question.
Thank you. Sir?
So you kind of touched on it earlier, but like you said, when taking a company from like 10 million to 50 million, there's a different leadership team, and then taking from 50 to 100, it's a different leadership team.
Can be. Not a guarantee, but can
be,
for sure.
Okay, so what changes, because it is your leadership team that took you from 10 million to 50 million, right? So now why do you need to change, or what kind of, what exactly changes in the mindset?
And by the way, it's not a blanket statement. I didn't have to redo the team, but some people can scale farther, and some people can't. My CFO, I've been very fortunate. I have the same CFO from Convio and Bazaarvoice, and he can go forever. He's just that strong. His name's Jim Offerdahl. Well, when you look at your business, and the job of a CEO many times is to continually understand, stay close to the business. What's the pulse of the business? What are you seeing out there? Visit with customers. Talk to people inside the company, and you see how the business is changing, right? In the case of Convio, we went from a kind of a one-size sales force fits all to having to have an inside-outside model, a market development team, an inside sales team, an outside sales team, and it was a pretty broad view, and different skill sets, different metrics, and all that. And the guy I had in place at the time wasn't working as well with him leading it. And I needed someone that had a broader view of all those models and had some more experience in that. Now, he's since developed all that and is doing well. It was a learning experience for him. But I had to make the tough call that, here I go, and I got to make those decisions. Engineering, we had a guy that was an outstanding leader in a small engineering team because he was a doer. He was really, he was in there coding with everybody else. And phenomenal technologist. But all of a sudden I needed someone who was managing and leading and hiring a team to scale and really thinking about problems out there versus the next release or the next short-term kind of engineering problem. So if you look at if you stay close to your business, you ask questions, you're in the business, you're watching it, you'll start seeing things that are not quite right, and eventually you'll walk down the path of, is it a execution issue, bad metrics, et cetera, or is the person leading the team not well versed in that area, and do I need to either help him or her get trained or make a change? And it's a tough call. Unfortunately, you get used to making personnel decisions as you're in it, but the first two are hard because you probably are pretty good friends with them outside of working with them.
The last question for tonight, I'm going to take the liberty. You talked earlier on about self-evaluation and how you have had to self-evaluate at all the different stages of what you needed to complement you and your team in the company. Talk to us about how you do that so that these folks here might learn a lesson from that they can take away on how they might consider self-evaluating.
I mean, I'm very open with the people that work for me. What am I doing well? What am I not doing well? I mean, if you want to get better in whatever you do, you have to accept feedback. You have to be able to do that. And there are a lot of people that don't do it well. What led to me working at Convio was at BMC Software. I was brought in to change BMC or help change BMC from a mainframe-dominated software company to more open platforms. And a year and a half into it, it was clear they didn't want to change. And I was causing trouble because I was just pushing for change, and yet I didn't have the support from leadership to make that change. So I walked into my boss and I said, "This isn't working." He goes, "Yeah, you're right. Done." And when I left, I didn't feel good about how that went. And so I actually had somebody do a complete workup of my strengths and weaknesses. And it's still something I look at from time to time about being impatient, not listening, not being as intuitive as I could be, meaning understanding what's going on with the situation. And that shaped me forever. And I get 360s all the time from my team. So whether you have a 10-person company or you have a 150-person or 1,000-person company, getting people to evaluate you in an unbiased way, meaning not necessarily if they don't want to give it to you directly, but having them be able to do it and submit it anonymously, whatever, is so healthy. And it creates a trust in you as a leader that is so important because you have to trust each other, especially in a small company. You have to have each other's back. And if you as a leader set an example of, hey, I know I'm not perfect in any way, shape, or form, and I want your feedback on that endears those people to you and they trust you more and more going forward. I think, BV, I've been able to develop trust because I'm very open about me, who I am, what I do, and what I represent. And the company needed that. I need to trust this guy because he's the third guy in the last 2 years and what's going on. So you have to be open to feedback. It's real simple. Listen, be open to feedback, and seek feedback. Don't just wait for them to tell you. Take the time every once in a while and say, so how are we doing? And that will start the process of them getting comfortable with talking to you about it.
Gene, this has been fabulous insight tonight. We greatly appreciate the hour you spent with us that's gone like this.
Hey, as a former MBA, I know what it's all about.
Right. Please join me in thanking Gene Austin.